In a world filled with conflict, in a universe comprised of differences, there's one thing that absolutely everything shares in common. We all exist. Including two guys named Jack and Michael, who like to chat about that very thing over a good cup of coffee. Let's pay them a visit, shall we?
Existence Brewing.
Oh no, I didn't want to cut in line. I'm just waiting for a guy. He's always so late, it seems like. Yeah. No, it's Oh, your name is Norm? Oh, I thought you asked me if I was normal. Oh, okay. All right, well, nice to meet you, Norm. Enjoy your coffee, latte, whatever that is. Oh, it's a cappuccino.
You know who else was named Norm?
Who's that?
A kid on the hill that killed his mom and kept her body in the back of the front office at the hotel.
That's right. It was the Bates Hotel.
Yeah, Mr. Bates.
Mr. Bates. That was such a weird movie.
Master Bates, as they called him.
Master Bates. Well, hey, Jack.
That was used in The Toy with Richard Pryor. The child in that movie who he was tasked with looking after, actually was paid royally to look after him, was named Eric Bates, but they called him Master Bates because he was like Richie Rich. I know, reportedly Richard Pryor absolutely loathed himself for doing that movie, and yet he did it anyway because Eric, the child, purchases Richard Pryor in that movie. He sees him acting slapstick inside a toy store and says, I want him. And so, and he's the son of a Louisiana bureaucrat who's played by Jackie Gleason. So true to form, that's how we knew he was a Southern kid, right? I mean, he goes into this toy store and wants to pick a live human being out of there instead of something of all the things. So anyway.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So anyway, Norman Bates leads to Master Bates leads to, hey, how are you, Michael?
Hey, I'm doing good, Jack. And so another movie that I have to add to my list of movies that we have discussed on this podcast. So
you haven't seen The Toy?
I haven't seen The Toy.
Oh, okay.
The other one that I watched was Communion. I saw that. And then there was another one. I want to say that we were talking about The Jerk. Were we talking about The Jerk?
Yeah,
I ran across The Jerk lately, and yeah, that is a classic. That's one that you really can't find on streaming services. You have to, pay for it.
You can find it on streaming services, but you have to pay to stream it. I watched it not too long ago, and it's on my streaming service, but it's one that I had to pay for. Let's put it that way.
Right.
So
yeah, and
it's out there.
I've noticed that recently that like I'm now, really into getting movies, being able to just on demand go and find a movie that I want to watch, but then I'm finding that I have to pay for a lot of the ones that I really want to watch and maybe the more obscure ones.
Isn't that interesting? We just added another streaming service here because my girlfriend already pays for one of them. And then I have another, but it was sort of by default because it comes with other stuff that you also get.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, we're dancing around this so as not to name any of the culprits so they don't get a free plug like they need one, any of them. But there's so many of them. So I added another one recently because I thought, well, I keep hearing about all these things that we can't watch. So I added another one recently. But there's still several more that we could add. And even then, you're still not going to have access to get everything for free. You're still going to have to pay for some movies.
Right.
And there's a few movies that I've discovered in looking for them, mostly 70s and 80s stuff, which, is my era. They're not, for whatever reason, they don't stream them. There's issues. There's some kind of copyright issues. The one that I was looking for that I learned this about, I think we talked about this at one point, but it was Cocoon. And I thought, oh, well, there must be some issue with the licensing of the movie itself. And it wasn't. It was the score. The film score had some kind of issue with the copyright or some kind of issue with the trademark, whatever the hell they do for those things. Anyway, the movie, apparently the producers or whoever owned the actual visual movie itself was fine with, sure, go ahead. But they hadn't yet settled with the people who produced the score that it was okay for them to have their score out on a streaming, because apparently it's a separate thing, either with some films or all films. And it's just crazy, the amount of legal paperwork that we stack up to make sure that, get in the way of the fact that I, at the time, a single, 40 some odd year old man, is barred from by himself on a lonely Friday night watching a movie that's 45 years old about
Cocoon.
A bunch of old people who get taken up into space by an alien race, which is exactly what's going to happen to me soon if I don't find this fucking movie to stream.
Yeah, right.
And so I just want to watch the thing, you know what I mean? So it's just, it's nuts.
I just love to be a fly on the wall when that conversation was happening amongst the rights holders of that score. We're not streaming. No, we're not going to do it. We're going to hold out.
Well, fortunately, I wasn't alone in wondering where Cocoon was for streaming purposes. So I wasn't the only, doof who was looking to stream this 40 years after the fact. I just can't get enough Jessica Tandy in a night robe at night, so that was the big thing. Or Hume Cronin. Can't get enough Hume Cronin or Jessica Tandy in the near buff that I'm like needing my fix. But I had never bought it on DVD, but that's what you had to do. You had to buy the DVD. And there were several others, though, that I had to do that with. The movie Mask with Cher.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
Like that. Yeah. And, Sam Elliott's in it, too. And then there's a few others that I wound up buying because you can't stream them for whatever reason. They're just there. And there's a few I've noticed that kind of come and go, like you can stream them for a while and then suddenly they take them away. It's just, so it's a bizarre thing. The whole world of the streaming verse is just, it's interesting to me anyway, because it used to be, of course, that, it used to be that you go see a movie in the theater or you don't see it again. It's over. Like,
right.
Where are you going to see it? And then home video, I actually was alive during a time when they didn't have home video for a while in the 70s. And when a movie was gone, you just yearned to see it, never saw it again. Then home box office was invented in the late 70s. Well, we got it in like the mid 70s, I guess. Anyway, I guess I've never been without a time to watch a movie after the fact, but usually you had to wait for it to come on to network TV or to syndicated TV where they, run the Late Show or something. But anyway, so the whole streaming verse is just crazy. And of course, there's way too much content. I mean, there's too many people doing. It almost reminds me of the line, and there's nothing wrong with creative content. It's just, that it's kind of like the more, I don't know, pick your flavor, the more of whatever they make, the less, the more the quality of most of it goes down. So it's kind of like the line in the Genesis song, Land of Confusion. There's too many men, there's too many people making too many problems. And that's kind of how I feel about just content in general. There's just too many people making it. And it's great, though, they have the right to do it, but it's just, you used to kind of know that there was a specific dedication to making content if you found something, even if it wasn't good. It's like, well, they went through a lot of trouble to make this, so let's give it a try. But now anybody like us can sit in front of a computer, and here we go.
I was going to say, yeah, even people like us, even cracks like us can put content out there. But no, it's very true. I think the bar has been set so low and the demand for content is so high that really, it's just, there's a lot of crap out there.
Well, which brings me to the TikTok thing that's been going on. I can't sit in that office for very long because I'm not on TikTok and I'm certainly not, addicted to it like so many people. But my God, you talk about, first of all, I have no idea what's going on with the whole thing with the Chinese. To me, that's strange. To me, I don't buy that for a second, of course, because I don't trust a thing that I'm told by the government. But doesn't that seem a little bit off to you?
It seems like a false
Like,
flag. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because here's the naked fact, in my personal opinion, would be this: you have far less to fear about the Chinese spying on you through your cell phone than you do the United States of America and its interests. So, and they're doing it every day. If you haven't noticed, like, gosh, I was talking about Pez the other day, and then it popped up on my screen. I'm getting all these Pez things. Yeah, so
Right.
I think you should probably be a lot more worried about what it is that the U.S. and whoever's actually staffing all this crap that's spying on us, their surveillance is going to do a lot more damage to you at the end of the day than the Chinese is, in my personal opinion. So this whole thing about leveraging, to me, it's just a strong arm game. It's just like, no, we're the only game in town. USA, we're going to own this. It's gotten too big. Once it gets too big, you have to sell it. It's what Disney did with Lucasfilm. It's what Disney did with all of that stuff. Muppets, they just came in and said, they send their goons. We know they do. Like, look, this has gotten too big. It's making too much money. It's ours. So we're going to write you a very handy check for it because we're nice guys and we don't want to make this look really weird, but we're taking it. End of story. And they did. And I think it's the same thing. I think whoever's truly got the vested interest in this has just decided, no, this is too big. It's got too much. There's too much influence at stake. There's too much power at stake with these digital platforms the way they are. Our controlling interests are taking this, or it's not going to happen. And then now it's been spun, of course, that the new regime that's taken office in the White House did everybody a favor at the 11th hour to keep it online, which also seems kind of suspect to me. But anyway, you'd think that they were taking away milk.
Yeah.
Or that they literally said that our taps weren't going to run with water tomorrow so we could take a shower or something. I mean, the people they freaked over their pacifier, this digital pacifier being taken away from them for more than a few minutes. And it's alarming to me. I mean, I can understand liking something. Like if I heard that YouTube was going away because I use YouTube for personal purposes, including like doing this. And I get that some people make money on the platforms and stuff, but still, if I heard it was going away, I'd be like, oh shit, it's going away. What am I going to do now to get, videos of cats that are doing crazy things, or where am I going to get my weird 80s underground music fix or stuff like that? Yeah. I guess I'll have to look somewhere else, but I guess I'm going to have to fill the time and have to get over it because they're taking it away. But this is just the fit that was thrown. I mean, just the petulance in mass about this deletion was just crazy to me. It's not healthy.
It seems misguided. And I really do kind of find it odd that an administration, I'm going to put this plug out there real quick, an administration that wants to ride in with the white flags flying and we're going to save everybody with government, what are they calling it? The Office of Government Efficiency that Elon Musk is going to be head of.
Oh, right.
And yet, all this wasted money, and yet we want to change the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. How much money do you think that's going to cost just in the brochures alone that probably, or the forms that have to be reprinted just to acknowledge that the Gulf of America, formerly the Gulf of Mexico, it just doesn't make any sense.
Here's the sad truth of that whole preposterous notion anyway, to me, Michael, and this is undoubtedly true. 5% of the American public can point to the Gulf of Mexico and tell you what it is. I mean, that's just a fact. Let's face it. People are just dumbstruck fucking stupid. They don't. Most of the people can't point to their own home state if they're shown a map of the United States. They don't know where it is, let alone any of the surrounding countries on the continent or around the world, God forbid. Now, I'm not saying you should be able to point to Zambia and not win a prize. That's a pretty spiffy knowledge of world geography. But you'd think one of the largest bodies of water that flanks North America, aka where you call home, would be something readily identifiable to the American public. And yet I guarantee you, maybe 5% is a little bit low. We'll go 10%. A lot of people are not going to be able to show you where that is. So why is it even important? I mean,
yeah,
we're
I don't
acting
understand
like we're
what
treating this like it's something important. Plus, it's a name of something that, what's in a name when it comes to humanity? It's like the whole deal with, it's the McKinley Denali thing. It's just like that mountain's been there for so much longer than we have, and it's going to be here for so much longer after we're gone. Who gives a shit? I mean, so fine. We're going to have a battle over what we call this. It's just,
You can see Russia from the top of Mount McKinley.
Yeah, you absolutely can.
But I digress.
You can probably see China too. A lot of Chinese balloons floating over today. The weather's nice.
So the reason I was bringing that up is that, anytime a government tells you that you can't use a media or you can't use an app or you can't, I can see, why they don't want you to use drugs. But at the same time, it's like when a government tells you can't do something like using a program that just so happens to be a social media program that is headquartered in a foreign country, and they're maybe concerned with what that foreign country or adversary might do with information that you're receiving from that said, a direct line of communication to your populace, that's what I have a problem with.
Well, let's move this back in time. You could probably move it back in time even 20 years, but let's move it back in time about 40 years to, my real childhood years, for example, in the 80s when the Cold War was still brewing pretty good. And just think about, first of all, the notion of being able to possess anything like that and exchange information on it is non-existent. The internet is not a thing. There's certainly no hand-sized devices that are going to be able to stream anything. So this is all Star Trek 40 years ago, but suggests to the American public that you're going, or the United States public. I hate to say American because we refer to ourselves as American, and yet Canadians are Americans, Brazilians are Americans, Guatemalans are Americans. It's all America from the top to the bottom. But anyway, you know what I mean. Tell the average guy sitting in his easy chair watching Tom Brokaw in the 1980s in the U.S. that he should be what's his interest level in this gizmo that's going to stream a Chinese-owned product. And you could even say maybe in the purposes of television, you could probably guise it that way and get away with it. It's not that no one would be able to comprehend the internet, but no one would be able to comprehend the reach or the influence or the scope of influence that the internet and that all of these different platforms have now, these social media platforms. But you could still probably put it on someone's television and say, Gus, we got this great new thing. It's a bunch of people from around the world doing all kinds of things on their own. It's all these home movies, right? It's all these camcorder shots. And we're going to put it on your TV. It's a new channel that you can look at right next to HBO, right? So it's there for you if you want it. And FYI, even though it features people from all around the globe, the Chinese just happen to own this. What do you think that means to somebody in 1985 as opposed to 2025?
Yeah.
To me, you're going to stir up a lot more ire because of a communist nation. First of all, the Chinese, it's quasi-communism at best. You have Walmart, you have Burger King, you have McDonald's, they have KFC. That's American capitalism at its finest. Those are the pillars of American capitalism, the businesses that are all raping and pillaging the planet to make the most money and squeeze out the small guys, the small businesses and the hometown mom and pops everywhere, Main Street America. Those are the guys that do it. And yet China's lining up to get them just the same. So you can't tell me that's communism. There's no way. Right. Russia, at least, the Soviet Union, at least, had one McDonald's, and it was in Red Square, and it was sort of just kitschy. It was like, well, we put one McDonald's here to spit at when we. Yeah. But of course, they loved it too. So
my point is that I don't think a democracy should really be telling its own people what it should listen to or shouldn't listen to, or what it should use or what it shouldn't use, especially when it comes to the world of social media. And it kind of makes me wonder too, like, are they really that concerned with a Spygate? I really don't think so. I think really what this comes down to is that they're concerned that a foreign adversary might have communication with its own people.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying, and that was to my point. Of course, as always, Jack took the long way around to get there, but no one cares. It doesn't matter to anybody. China isn't seen as an enemy. China makes 9/10 of the things that are sitting on the store shelves of your hometown right now. Doesn't matter where you go. It was manufactured in China and brought to the United States via some kind of Chinese handshake that we have with them, or that this country and its interests have with them. So China is not like saying, the Soviet Union, it's not like saying that it was the USSR or something back in the days of the Cold War. So they're decades late to that game if they think they're really going to rile anybody's interest by saying, the Chinese own it. Well, so what? I mean, nobody really cares. We don't have an identifiable world enemy any longer. But this, of course, spins into the things that we talk about with Dr. Greer, which is, the false flags, which is, yes, there used to be nations at war that we worried about. And then it's terrorism. So it's these smaller cells that are rogue in essence, or they're unidentifiable or difficult to contain or pin down, or we don't know where they are. And then suddenly, the next thing is the war in space that they're still apparently planning. And I know we were wanting to talk about his podcast today anyway, because he started a new one that is up to about 3 episodes now. And it's great to see him back and kind of doing what he does best. Lots of rehashing, as he has a tendency to do, to welcome in new people to the fold, which I understand, but also lots of new things that he's discussing too, including the recent drone issue, which he's saying is just another way of them flexing their ability to pull off this hoax alien invasion and letting the powers that know that. So yeah.
I mean, that was a big thing. I think 2 big events that occurred over the weekend. One of them was obviously kind of Stephen Greer continuing this new podcast. And I really think that it's a great opportunity for him. We're a huge fan of his work and where he sees himself in the mix of the Disclosure Project. And a lot of times people who are new to the disclosure that I run across that will ask me, questions about drones, or, I think we all, if you're into it, you are probably that guy that someone knows who's into it. And they're like, hey, tell me what you know about this. Like, well, what's the deal with this? Why is this going on? Because they know that I follow it really closely. And I think that Stephen Greer, I've come to have a real respect for him because of just kind of, I think his stewardship is a good word for it, in regards to his role in disclosure and how he wants to see our role as a human race in the universe. Do you think that that's fair to say?
Yeah, I think what Dr. Greer is up against, and I would hate to categorize or classify myself in some way that seemed to be untouchable or unbroachable, because that's not the intent. But I think Stephen I think I identify with Stephen in that way, because I think that it's the notion of, I think he knows that his stance is going to be, forgive the term, alien to people. He doesn't like that term, actually, when it comes to talking about our space friends and brothers and sisters. But I think he understands that his concepts are going to be abstract, but I don't think he realizes just exactly what he's up against when it comes to the general perception of the average, there's that word again, person who's walking around Main Street America. It's difficult. I mean, when you're a unique thinker, when you perceive the world differently, when you see things from angles that other people just simply don't, and it's a default setting for you, you have a tougher challenge communicating in life because you see it that way, but 99 other people in the room do not. And it's to the degree at which they are unwilling to even try and look through that lens that becomes the issue, when you're just saying, look, like we've talked about on a recent podcast, I don't want to change your mind. I don't want to influence you. I want you to decide that. I just want to show you through these lenses. I just want to show you through this set of eyeballs and through this strainer, this sieve of perception, what that looks like to me, just so that you can have that to think about, so you can have that to contemplate. And I think that's what he's up against. I think this is a man who's dedicated his entire life to that, and his world. Think about it. If what he's saying is true, and here I'll frame this with myself, just to paint myself in an equally pathetic light with most of the rest of the world. If there's a way for you to sit in that same easy chair, that we talked about earlier for the 80s guy in front of HBO, and make contact with other life forms throughout the universe to just say, hey, what's going on? I wanted to talk to you today and see what's up. And you're not doing that, and you have no concern with that because you're too worried that they're going to ban TikTok, or that, like espresso flavored Doritos, which is a thing, by the way, are going to leave store shelves soon, or like or they're, or that Snoop on a stoop is sold out at fucking Walmart. Well, that shows you what you've prioritized in life, that. And I think about this every time I watch that man or hear him talk. I just think to myself, what are you doing?
Wait a minute. Did you just say that Snoop on a stoop is sold out at Walmart?
It's the Chinese fault too. They made it, they're taking it back. So I think what he faces is the same thing that, and again, we talk about layers. I've known people that have, they have no stature in the world to the level of a Nikola Tesla. They haven't invented anything necessarily that's earth shattering. They haven't done anything. They're not famous. People don't know them. But think about your abstract minds, your great inventors, your poets, your musicians, these people who seem to be able to just, for whatever reason, conduct that little portion of the Akashic through this space. And most other people just don't. We enjoy their work. We tend to idolize them perhaps for what it is we call their work, but we don't appreciate just how isolated they are based on their ability to perceive and channel that as opposed to someone else's. But it doesn't mean that it's not outside of all of our grasps. It's just we have to change what we value. And
one might say alienated.
Oh, that works. Yeah, for sure. Again, I know Stephen doesn't like the term alien because he feels that it is alienating, but he does call the act of prejudice against species from other planets, from other worlds, alienation, literally, or excuse me, alienism is what he calls it.
Well, and I think the information in the last probably 2 years has been moving so quickly in from, the time that he started this project. He claims, he's been doing this for over 30 years. And really, I think he probably didn't come up on some people's radar. I would say really the hardcore people's radar until he did that press release or that press conference at the press club, which I forget which year that was, but I think it was pre-COVID. Is that right?
It was 2001.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And
COVID.
Yeah. And it was right before 9/11. And he may have come out and directly said this, but I'm pretty sure that Stephen's allusions, at least over the years, have been that even 9/11 may have been an attempt to get the nation's attention completely diverted from this subject because it was so front and center after that. I mean, there was really nothing like what had happened at the National Press Club 24 years ago that occurred ever to bring light of this subject on a national stage to that level, because he'd collected so many high quality whistleblowers, as we know them now, people that had been told keep their mouths shut, that were high ranking military officials, or, he had the fellow that was running the radar room up there in Alaska with the one thing that happened. I think I want to say it was funny guy Callahan, I think was his name, or O'Callahan or something like that. I don't remember all their names, but anyway, just a fine group of people that all put themselves at pretty great risk, either professionally, personally, or in both capacities, to come out and say these things. And yet it didn't latch on. It's never latched on like you'd think that it would. And I don't think that's entirely because of the fact that false flags exist and they make something go boom to catch our attention and keep it somewhere else. I think that's on us. I think we have to keep our eye on the ball, but we are so distracted by our little personal lives, by our little personal world where we have all of our things and we want more, and we're climbing this illusory ladder, and we want, we just crave all of these material things. And I understand that it's a material construct. We're craving all these emotional satisfactions. I think we're craving a lot that we tend to get from TikTok or because so many people are in such faulty relationships. And what I mean by that is they're so unhealthy, but there is also people that have really great loving families and great loving relationships with their children or their spouses and things. And so we want that too. So there's a lot of things to want while we're here. And in one word, we're told to desire everything and go for it. And in another, which isn't as big a megaphone anymore, but the spiritual one, or at least the theological one, would be aimed at us and say, stop wanting all these things, temper your desires, because this is an ephemeral experience and there's more to it than that. And so again, I just think we go back to a balance. But I learned about this, the CTI, the contact protocols from Dr. Greer. I was painting my house. I was getting it ready to sell. And this has probably been a good 10 or 12 years ago when I stumbled across his work. And I've never attempted them to this day. I'm sorry to say. I'm a huge fan of his work, and I'm always interested to hear what he has to say. I'm on his side, per se. I'm certainly on the side of universal peace. And I think I even identify as a soul that's here from one of those places, actually, that is, and maybe that's why I don't have an interest in it, because it's like I make contact every day. I look in the mirror. That's the way I see myself, as sort of this visitor here. But really, there's kind of no excuse for not going deeper into it. There's also maybe a subconscious notion that I'm not ready for it. He's had a lot of people go out on his missions with him. He says there's always one or two that go on the missions where they'll go out into the desert or up in the mountains and do the contact protocols. And, people have to be really ready for this. And when they're not, and shit starts to go down, there's always that one or two that are terrified, because it is alien to them, and it's understandable, but it sort of spoils the mood, if you will, for everybody else, and also scares the shit out of those that are, going to come in, as he says, and vector into this space, because they don't want to upset anybody. They're not looking to frighten people, so.
Well, and I think that this podcast, the genesis of this podcast, was probably because of all this fast-moving information. I mean, you can't really produce a documentary on Gaia, for instance, as quickly as you can just hop into your living room with a webcam and address your followers. I mean, I think that this is probably where he should have been a long time ago in trying to kind of provide a narrative, which I believe he's really trying to do, is trying to provide a narrative and direct some of, his philosophies into this disclosure era that we're embarking on. And, it's the reason I wanted to bring it up is because I thought that this recent podcast, episode 3, for instance, really did a good job of kind of addressing and bringing up to speed some of I don't know if hardcore is the right word for it, but there's some pretty disturbing allegations that I think would probably rock the man sitting in his easy chair awake and just kind of go, wow, that really happens, huh? And so, one of the things that I wanted to talk about was this News Nation documentary that came out on Saturday. Have you seen it yet?
I haven't, no.
And I want to say it's a documentary, but it's really kind of more of like a 2020 news piece. I mean, it's not really as long as a documentary, but Ross Colehart, who's one of the hosts on News Nation, I think he's like an Australian, and is News Nation, and I say this with a straight face, but is News Nation the one that was supposed to replace Fox News? Where did News Nation come from?
That I couldn't tell you either. We have all of these different entities now that have sort of cropped up overnight.
It's kind of scary But
I've never heard of them before, just recently.
Yeah, and I've seen some of they've been really doing a full court press on YouTube. I've seen a lot of their content just through YouTube, and it's probably because of this podcast that they've got me flagged. But the documentary, anyway, goes into detail about this pilot. His name's Jake Barber, who was a part of a reconnaissance team that worked for a company that was contracting with the U.S. government. And so their job was to go out and recover crafts of non-human origin. And really that was the purpose of this News Nation interview. But then as the onion gets peeled away, we talk about, the extraterrestrial being the shite, the bright, flashy object. But really, then you start to kind of peel away layers of the onion, and you start to kind of see where, a lot of these people not maybe wanting to come forward and discuss the things that they've discussed or that they've witnessed and they've been involved in with some of these government contractors. And I think we've brought up in the past kind of how this weird, perverse relationship of government contractors and the U.S. government, they get really cozy together because then the U.S. government can really plausible deniability. And your ability to say, no, that doesn't exist, when in reality it does exist, and you've been able to essentially have these government contractors take over the heavy lifting when it comes to these things. And so I wanted to play a few little clips from Dr. Greer's episode 3, and it kind of, again, comes on the heels of this News Nation release, and this is the piece that he's talking about. And another, do you ever have those people in your life, or these people that you run across, Jack, on news, where you just love how they have the ability to like break things down for people, and these terms that will be flown around, and Dr. Greer does a really good job of he refers to NHI, or non-human intelligence recon team, and so he does a really good job of kind of breaking down some of these really kind of foreign concepts for people. So the first clip that I wanted to play is, this idea of why maybe non-human intelligent craft, there has been kind of a lag in disclosure in the coming months, and maybe more whistleblowers haven't come forward.
Acronym term now is NHI, non-human intelligence craft. And there is a great deal more than what you saw in that episode. So the original plan, just to let people know what was originally thought to be done, and its evolution, some may say devolution over the last few months, is that there was going to be a collection of all that hard evidence of these operations, the craft, the operators, the locations, et cetera, and so on. And that was going to be done anonymously. They were not going to reveal who they were for OPSEC, operational security reasons, and their own safety, both legally and personally. As you saw on the show, people have been killed. He didn't go into details. I know the details, and there have been recent fatalities related to these operations of people trying to come forward. And we're at this inflection point where we need these people to come forward full Monty, right? However, the problem is the United States government is lagging in instituting the protections, the executive orders, the congressional bills to protect and to make a pathway out of these operations that have been run illegally, so that the people involved are not prosecuted. They have amnesty, they have physical protection, and there's a robust effort in law enforcement here and abroad to get these corrupt and illegal projects under control, which is a very heavy lift.
He brings up a good point, because I think that was one of my first thoughts too after the TikTok video was released is, why isn't there more? You want this kind of flood of information to then, come out, and really sometimes it just seems like a little trickle, and then it stops for a little while. And then maybe, a few months go by and you'll have another little trickle. See what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, Jake Barber is sort of the centerpiece, as the way Dr. Greer has framed it, of this catalog, I guess, if you will, this cadre of whistleblowers who are supposed to come forward because they are high-ranking enough to be impressive to the lay person once they actually reveal something. I mean, they're not grunts that are on the front line. It's not a janitor somewhere who's sweeping floors at Area 51, right? It's somebody who's got a lot of higher up knowledge, who've been a part of these crash retrieval operations, and they have some more intimate knowledge of the finer details that are going to be important to fill in those gaps for the narrative. And so what he was alluding to there is the fact that originally, again, because this is so damning, really, just because of the way the the system, I guess, works, the wet works and things that he talks about for assassinating people that break their silences and come forward with this kind of information. The secrecy is so dire, it's so deathly, that they were just going to do a huge information dump. Here's all of this stuff, all these videos, this trail of paperwork, these things that we have. And then they personally decided instead they were going to pivot. They were going to come forward, which is a whole different apple, as he talked about. I mean, it's a completely different, piece of, it's a totally different game when you're talking about a person coming forward and revealing their true identity and not blurred, with that black stuff they use on all those programs.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's just, well, Dr. Greer and I were talking about it one day.
Right.
I mean, it's literally like, they don't do that. He's not in the shadows. It's full on. And so that preparing for that has been quite something. What crosses my mind as we hear that, and as we get into this subject a little bit deeper on this episode, is going down the road a stretch with the disclosure of what's really at stake here, which are put all this together. It's those technologies that allow these craft to do what they have been doing for, in some cases, again, millions of years on an advanced world, from, beings that have made these things. And then we've retrofit them or retro-engineered them or somehow mastered gravitics, as he talks about in the 1950s, and finally gotten to the stage where we can do this on our own. Even if disclosure occurs squeaky clean, and we get all the bad guys that are wanting to make people wet, that are wanting to assassinate you for coming forward and stepping out of the shadows, and stepping into, this place that's more filtered sunshine at best, or even fully illuminated, let alone these dark ops programs, these shadows, these specters that they're running through. What are they stepping into? Is my bigger question, because I think the one misnomer about disclosure is that, okay, if we can get everybody shifted out of these dark ops programs and we can illuminate the technologies, we can, and as he talks about in these recent narratives that he's spun, these recent podcasts, we can't let all of the schematics loose because we still have people that will do dangerous shit with them. So they have to leave the blueprints in the filing cabinet locked away still, but we can at least release what they do in general terms because they've been playing with them for 70 years now, and they've advanced technologies that would allow us to be so much further along as a species. The problem that I see is this, and this is where maybe even my piece of it specifically as a light worker, as more of the philosophical part of this comes in, quite honestly, I see that, is, okay, that's wonderful. Now what? Because even though they might say, fine, we'll come out of the dark and we'll show you some of these toys and we'll let you know what they do, but we're not going to release the blueprints because it's still too dangerous, which is understandable even in a world that we live in like this, they're not going to let go of Uncle Capitalism at all. Uncle Capitalism is going to absolutely still steer this game of Monopoly. And that's going to pose a new problem for us because, and I look at, again, maybe not the president so much that's just taken office, but I look at this coterie of very wealthy, very influential people in a geopolitical and global sense that are lining up rank and file behind him, even at the inauguration ceremonies with their new wives or their wives to be. And of course, all we want to run with is who's staring at, Jeff Bezos's fiance's cleavage, right? Because Zuckerberg's staring right at him, and I didn't see it, but I can think, yeah, it's Mark Zuckerberg. Okay, look at him. The guy jerks off to everything. I mean, take a good look at the guy. There's no question. He jerked off to the Grinch that stole Christmas. I mean, there's no question about it. He's a doof. And I'm just being an idiot right now. I'm getting off the serious trail, but it's kind of true. But just to finish out, I know I'm maundering as usual, but just to finish out, those are the guys I worry about. They're lining up to take possession of those technologies potentially, because if anti-gravitic technology and being able to materialize and dematerialize it, guess who wants it, man? Elon, baby, and companies just like him. They want to own that stuff, because you think they're rich now, holy shit, they're going to run the world. And we have the same problem then, and it's dressed up out in the open now. We went from the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain to the Wizard of Oz, taking a whiz on all of us right in front of the damn thing. That's a problem for me. And that's where people, humans, the souls that occupy us, need to change the way that they view this experience, the way that they want to actually move through this experience and be governed. And which to me is the answer is not to be governed, but we've proven that we don't want to be responsible for ourselves too much to this point. So we like government because we can blame them for not taking care of us, and we expect them to. And that's the pitfall of every government that's ever been, by the way. So anyway.
Well, and look at the framework and the industry and like we were talking about before, the cozy relationship that has developed between these government contractors who are providing a service for the government. And, you look at aerospace and how many subcontractors are involved in, just an aircraft like the 777. I mean, like I really do think that there's this huge industry that has been created alongside government bureaucracy, and you brought up a really good point. I mean, Elon Musk and SpaceX. I mean, space has now become the next commercial frontier. Jeff Bezos also has his own space program, and you start to look at really how, as impressive as a SpaceX launch is, and how really I saw my first one just a few weeks ago when they had one of the crafts jettison or explode. I saw that rocket booster come down and guide itself back onto the launch pad. That's impressive. I mean, you look at that and you go, wow. I mean, like, when did space rocket launching become, and these people are like cheering? I guess those are the SpaceX employees. I mean, when did all of this become entertainment all of a sudden? And, you start to look at, some of that technology, and it's impressive, but it's almost like it also shows you how primitive we really are in our space technology. And, it's not 100% accurate, and it's highly dangerous. And so, anyway, I wanted to get kind of back in and jump ahead to cut 3 here, when he talks a little bit about some of this technology that they've discovered. And, one of the kind of the BS things about this documentary, which is that, there's this kind of this layer of the onion that suggests that UAPs are dangerous because of some of the nuclear radiation that's been involved. Let's listen in.
Now, one other huge mistake that's been made, and this is the most damning one, the most dangerous, let me say, was the facile and incorrect association with personal injury and radiation with NHI craft. Let me be blunt. This is bullshit. All right. So I want to unpack that for people. An interstellar vehicle is not using a nuclear power plant. The ones that are using nuclear power plants are ours. They're human.
So going back to the man sitting on his lazy chair, mind blown when all of a sudden, wait a minute, you telling me that some of those things out there are ours?
Well, and there's a a pretty, I won't say it's well known, because the factions that are purportedly behind it have done all they can to sweep it under the rug, but it was a pretty public enough event. It took place in Texas, and it involved a man-made UFO, a man-made UAP, as we would call them now, that ran on nuclear fuel, some kind of nuclear technology, having an anomaly, having a breakdown in mid-flight. And the craft was seen. It was apparently up on some kind of test run. It came to a lower altitude than was prescribed and was spotted by some people that said, hey, it's a UFO, because it absolutely was. To them, it was absolutely unidentified, and it was flying, although it was, for the purposes of what it was supposed to be doing in a propulsionary sense, it was sputtering along at that point. Well, they got, apparently a couple of them, underneath this craft, and radioactive material actually contacted their skin and caused some dramatic health issues very rapidly. And this is on the U.S. government, of course, because had this happened with a helicopter flight, of course, helicopters aren't nuclear powered, but imagine, something leaking from a helicopter or a jet or something in broad daylight, by the way, and it gets on to somebody, it's going to be, there's a lawsuit there that's absolutely winnable. It's, there's a settlement, because the U.S. government has to step forward, not that it doesn't have pretty deep pockets, and say, yes, Mr. and Mrs. McGillicuddy of Texoma, Oklahoma, were affected adversely by this most unusual and most, and we are not admitting to any wrongdoing, and we're not admitting that we're not admitting anything, but here's this check for, a couple $100,000 to make it all better. That apparently is true. That happened. So, this is not the crude technology that we're talking about, that we think about, that we have in place now. I would love to know. I really hate to talk about Elon Musk on our podcast, because my girlfriend doesn't think he's human, and I'm right behind her. I'm not sure what's wrong with that guy, but I mean, rank and file. It's kind of like the Zuckerberg phenomenon too. We just alluded to him, and I don't know if you've seen the interview with Mark Zuckerberg where he's in the sweatshirt in front of the audience, just a typical deal, kind of. It's outside of, it's in front of somebody at like a town hall or like a college theater kind of thing, and they're on stage and the moderators are talking to him, and they're these typical, geeky Sarah Purcell types. And oh my God, Sarah Purcell, that name's from the past. Real people, what a show. So, it's Regis and Kathy Lee interviewing Mark Zuckerberg, and it's supposed to be this happy time, and something very bizarre happens. He starts to have what appears to be like a panic attack, but it almost appears that he's being controlled by, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole today, but it's crazy. So I don't know what's going on with all that, but I wonder about that too. All I know is that I wonder what he's been made privy to. You wonder what some of these people have been made aware of, or in their own ways are, what is he tinkering with behind the scenes? Because you're not going to get to Mars in a conventional vacuum,
right?
And really make it happen. And to just get on another soapbox real quick, make no mistake, folks. I mean, if you think we are going to Mars, because I know that Mr. Trump has now recently said he wants to put a U.S. flag on Mars, gag me. I'm sorry, the one's still on the moon, because the story is that, like Neil and et al. From the Apollo mission step off the lunar lander and immediately are greeted by a whole set of watchful eyes from just beyond, the first hump. And they're like, holy shit. And they plant their flag and they leave. Look, they don't care. The idea of ownership of anything that's universal, that's a universal construct, is completely ridiculous to them. They don't care. They're certainly not going to recognize, we have to vacate immediately. It's a U.S. flag. They've claimed it for themselves. That whole thing of planting a flag has got to go, man. And yet here it is front and center right before the American people once again. I want to put a flag on Mars. Well, look, for what? It doesn't matter. But make no mistake, have you ever been to the moon? Because I haven't been to the moon. we ain't going to Mars. They are going to Mars, and they are going to terraform it because they are going to make it a palatial new paradise for themselves. If they terraform Mars, if we terraform Mars with our money, by the way, with our resources, this thing, okay, fine. It's the biggest Disneyland experience in the universe, and it's absolutely as exclusive as it gets. You are not going. I'm certainly not going with what I make and with what social status stratum that I'm in. I mean, so we have to get real about the problem that we really have as a species, as a culture, as a society, before we also gear up to be told, hey, aliens are real and they want us to reach across the universe and shake hands with them and share their technology so we can all live in Shangri-fucking-La, which we already do, by the way, in the universe. We're just making it horrible on ourselves because we don't know any better. We have to change that because we are socially stunted. As a species, we are retarded spiritually and in many other ways. We are into this caste system thing. We are playing this Richie Rich game where we're exalting and extolling people who do absolutely nothing but only for their wealth. We worship plutocrats to the highest degree. We take their orders. We do what they say. We think like them. We dress like them. We act like them. It's got to stop. We're not going anywhere, whether we have the technology or not. I'm here to tell you that's my place in it, one of the principal ones anyway.
Well, and Dr. Greer goes on to say that a little bit of information or a little bit of knowledge is a very dangerous thing.
Their primary purpose is not to down ET craft, it's to test the man-made ones. He referred to rather obliquely, i.e. the aerospace companies' discs, triangles, and objects that are ours. I will tell you absolutely that is the big secret, not the extraterrestrial part of this. The big secret is that we have those technologies. They have been used illegally. They continue to be used illegally in everything from human trafficking to drug running to abducting and murdering people. Those operations have to be stood down and stood down quickly. And that is the biggest part of the secret. Actually, the powers that be in these covert programs want everyone to believe that everything that goes bump in the night out there is alien, and it isn't. And that is part of the false flag. It is a key part of the deception, the grand deception.
So I thought really that out of the entire episode, and really in regards to this documentary, was my big takeaway from both of these things, was that it is this grand deception. And they've really been wielding this technology at their own free will. And everyone else has just been kind of drug along on these false flag rabbit holes, whatever you want to call them. And, you know, it really starts to kind of go back to a point that we made. And I want to play this last clip a few episodes ago, which is, how do we view this in a democracy? And what is the public's role in this?
The only way people are going to act is that this needs to become a crescendo that builds from the public. Many, many members of Congress have said, yeah, but we're not hearing from people on this. So take responsibility. I can't do everything. My team can't do everything. Jake and his guys who are risking their lives, and they are genuinely courageous, wonderful patriots. They need your help. We need your help. So I would say, we say we live in a democracy, let's act like it. Now, we know that the democracy's been hollowed out, but maybe it's hollowed out because we, the people, aren't doing what we should be doing.
So yeah, check it out. News Nation Whistleblower documentary, and of course the Stephen Greer podcast, wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded. I like to watch him on YouTube.
Yeah, it's good to see him out there again. So, again, on the same vein that I've been thrumming through all of this today, because, again, I just feel like it's always where my heart and soul goes to, because it's kind of supposed to go there, because, again, that's my abstract way of looking at this. And I'm not sure that it's so abstract. I think it's just, maybe it's more top of mind to me than it is for others. I'm not sure what's going on there. But how did we arrive here? That's the other question that I'd love to ask when we think about, Dr. Greer has talked about how the 40s come along, we're playing with nukes in the desert, and we're also messing with electrostatic weapons for the first time, and we down one of these crafts in Corona, New Mexico. It's more synonymous with Roswell because that's where the debris was initially taken, but this crash actually occurred closer to what's called Corona, New Mexico. But in any event, this event happens, and it becomes the bellwether for the modern extraterrestrial phenomenon here on planet Earth and North America in particular, in the Western side of the world. That's really still the big cornerstone of, hey, we got a craft, because we did. And at the time, there was a very we sort of angle on this because it was put in the fucking newspaper the next day. Flat out, just, we have a flying disc. And then the next thing you know, and it took very little time, they had a flying disc.
Mm-hmm.
We had absolutely nothing.
There was nothing to see.
Right. What we got was a story. We got disinformation. We got a lie. We got something for our own good, as always, right? It's for our own good.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where this shit gets real, because it's been played on television, on the X-Files, and every other movie about the subject so many times that it becomes fictitious in nature to us just by default, because the lie turns into something apocryphal. It turns into a story. It turns into something that isn't real when it absolutely is. But over time, it erodes the human psyche's ability to be able to distinguish from what's real and what's not, and it becomes implausible. And the part of this is the big dark room with all the cigar smoking guys with all the fruit salad on their chest, or whoever the fuck they are that are pulling all these strings. Somebody somewhere like that made that call and said, hey, get this out of the paper, get a story cooked up quick, and get this swept under the rug fast so that we no longer have the attention of the American people or the world at our doorstep for whatever reason. And then that extrapolates over the years into the issue that we're facing today. How many people pulling how many strings on all of this technology that's super unbelievable high ends? It's as Star Trek as it gets. It's literally teleporter shit, like stepping in and, there's going to be one in every Walmart. I just know it. Hey, I'm going to the Walmart real quick to get some more Mountain Dew. You just went 8 seconds ago. Yeah, I know, but I'm going again, right? So welcome to the American use of the teleporter from Star Trek when we actually get our hands on it, right? How did we get here? And to me, that's very important to look at, because to me, that is the absolute crux of the problem that we're facing. And it's always going to be the crux of the problem that humanity as a species faces until it can get its act together. And that is greed. And the difference between greed and all those things that kind of go along with it, and integrity, and the integral fiber of being as one, and knowing that there's no gain in this game of corporeality, that this is an ephemeral experience. It's on the clock, it's ticking, and that there's more at stake here than just your physical existence. It's what happens after you're gone from this existence, because you may very well reincarnate into it multiple times over again, or just have an impact on the sons and daughters that you leave here, which used to be important to us, so we were told, but now it doesn't seem to be so much the case anymore. The reason we got here is because of very few people got together who had power over this particular technology once it crashed here, or once we retrieved it, or however that happened, and said, hey, guess what? We can have this for ourselves. This is like Santa Claus being real. This is like Santa coming down the chimney in the middle of the night and leaving a big old cake in the middle of the living room. And you get up with your brothers and sisters while 20 of your other relatives are sleeping soundly, waiting to get up in the morning and crack presents and drink eggnog. Uncle's going to spike it at 7:40 in the morning, of course, like he always does with the bad rum that he brings, in the flask. And you say to your friend, hey, look at this cake he left. And the first thought from at least one of them goes to what? We can have all this cake for ourselves.
Yeah, we can hide it.
It's our cake. We found it. It's ours. Let's not share it. Fuck those people. They don't deserve cake.
And when
we
you look at the events that were going on in the world around the time of the Roswell crash, I don't know that you can necessarily blame them for maybe wanting to keep things as tight as they did. I think what the question then becomes is, why has it been mishandled for as long as it has?
Well, I think it's the same reason.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I think that the crux of the problem is that greed eventually wins out. Is that, hey, we have no reason to share this with everybody. This is ours, and we are the masters of this because we either found it or we're in a position to dominate this technology. We're not going to roll it out ever. And that's the thing. We're never going to roll it out. We're going to keep it. They've blacklisted almost 4,000, black shelved almost 4,000 patents that were applied for, taken them away from people that have tinkered in their basement or spare room, making shit, trying to make the world better, trying to give us a leg up. Nope, gone. That's ours. We've taken it in the name of national security, in the name of, no, this is just too dangerous to put in the hands of just anybody. And forget that you know about this and never tinker with it again, by the way, or come to work for us and we'll pay you handsomely, but we'll destroy you and your life and your family if you ever say a word to anybody. It's no way to run any kind of a society. It's no way to run any kind of a species doing anything anywhere. It's going to implode. And I fear that's what's happening as a result of that. So we got here, make no mistake, not because of some fantastical comic strip or some comic book series that unfolded episode after episode that we're just a part of. This happened for the same reason that you or I may have at certain points in our lives made the decisions to take just a couple more good and plenties than we gave to our friend out of the box when we were, on a road trip with him. It's the same mechanics of selfishness and greed. So the things that get us into these elaborate, enormous, giant, huge, worldwide problems, this, oh my God, alien technology that we have that we can't, it's the same thing that causes you to take just a little bit bigger slice of Uncle Chester's cheesecake that he brought over than you're going to serve to the rest of the family because you're the one that got to serve it to everybody. And don't say that we haven't all done that when we're the ones making pancakes on Saturday morning or Sunday morning, that we make ours just a little bigger or we make an extra one. It's natural, but that's the kind of thing that gets us here. And it may be far reaching for some. I don't know how, because it's literally an affect of being human that's right in front of us at all times. And if that were taken away, well, imagine the world that we have.
Man, the disclosure got a whole lot more complicated now, didn't it, Jack? I thought it was going to be just rainbows and gumdrops, and they were going to finally tell us the secrets that they've been hiding. Now you mean I have to do something? I have to change?
Yeah, that's the tough part of it, see? And remember how amazing of a Rube Goldberg's machine the universe is. All of the things that ball dumps into and knocks over and spits up and turns down and spins upside down and whirls and twirls and spins and flies over. Think of all of the things, and we've all been through serendipitous times in our life. We've experienced things that are just, okay, look, it's magical. There's no other way to put it. This is not coincidence. This is some kind of a crazy machine that is so perfect to to a scale that's unbelievable on the most finite and the most macro of ways at the same time. That's the machine that we're all a part of, that matrix that we talk about. And so this is unfolding just as it's supposed to, and it's based on exactly where we are as opposed to how ready we are to receive it. Make no mistake, just where we've been foiled all this time, we've been lied to, we've been, made the object of all of these nefarious actions by all these people. Well, yes, that's true. But also we're getting exactly what we deserve in some ways when you plug it into that matrix, because are we ready for that? I would argue that people in the 1940s and 50s, at least in the Western world, were not ready for that. I would think now we're starting to get more ready for it on ways we weren't ready then, but maybe we're less ready for it still in other ways, or not quite as ready for it. Because yes, the world will have to change. Its people will have to change once this comes to the forefront. Because look, I think the earth is a pretty cool place. And I think human beings, and I've just, did this recently, so I don't want to do it again, but for as dreadful as we can be, for as horrible and nasty a scourge as we can be, I think we know how to party like nobody else in the universe. And I think the ETs recognize that. And I think that they really want a piece of the best part of that. But they want us to leave 95% of it at the door because it's completely ridiculous and unnecessary. So if we can blend our spirit, if we can blend the energy that we carry when we're doing these things with their know-how and their ability to shepherd the way through what otherwise a big cold vacuum of space, I think we have something. I think we have a very long-lasting partnership, but we have to be ready for it. And I don't think our behaviors are telling us that we are. We're also bored. So I will say that. In our defense, I will say that we are bored out of our minds as a society. And it's going to take something like this to get us nudged out of said boredom. And so maybe we are tardy to the table. Maybe it has been delayed because we would not be in some of the messes that we are. The Places I've Pooped app would not be a real thing if it weren't for the fact that maybe disclosure happened 60 years ago instead of perhaps tomorrow or the next day or within the next 5 or 10 years. But I don't know. I just know that we all have a place in it, and we all have to accept the responsibility that comes with that and stop looking to the governments and to, because we make them both our greatest enemy and our greatest keeper at the same time. People complain about government and what they do more than anything else, it seems like, where at the same time we all say, where's the government when I need them? The government's supposed to step in and give me a check. It's not that way. It's got to be a different world. And we've got to get out of this thing about living on the hill above everybody. We've got to get over that. Trust me, I was the kid that grew up on the hill. Like I said, my story has got more than a little bit of the Buddha sprinkled in it. Okay. I mean, I'm not professing to be, I don't want to be a messiah. It's not in my catalog. It's not my day planner. It's too much responsibility. I don't want to be, that's not what I'm about. I'm just saying that, especially when you're raised with that, there's a mindset, there's a plutocracy that is innate to your very way of doing things that is hazardous to the whole world. It's toxic, and you need to shed that. And people that seek it, people that say, well, I want to win the lottery so I can check out and make myself better than everybody else by living up there on the hill and having more toys. Jesus Christ, dude, you got to get your head out of the hole that it's in. So anyway, as we wrap up today, I know I've got all these things sitting here. We were wanting to jump into something a little bit more transcendental, I guess, of a topic here. We've been talking a lot about current events and such. And so, for those that maybe appreciate the packages that are a bit more, I don't know, philosophically or even spiritually charged, we'll have one of those for you here, maybe even next episode. But I found this and wrote it down, and it's at least semi-applicable to what we've talked about today. I think enough so just to put a bow around everything that it applies. So I'll just read it to you real quick. One of my downloads, of course, the big U giving me some stuff to think about, and then, issuing a share order as well. Actually, it's not a share order at all. It basically says you can do what you want with it. So the directive comes from me to share, to say, look, you should, do something with this. It isn't just for you. This should be for everybody. So if you miss this in your mailbox, I've got it for you. And what I wrote down is there's no such thing as evil. And as you know, I'm not big on evil as a universal balancing mechanism, the yin yang thing, the fact that 50% of the universe has to be filled with dark blight, with terror and horror in order for the light to have a contrasting element to it, so we know it's good. Fuck that. I don't believe that at all. I know that the Eastern philosophies may choke on that, but I don't believe that. I don't believe that evil is an inherent property to the universe. I believe in something called the neutral universe model, which is the universe just creates, and then whatever it creates is given the free will to do with said creation and its ability to continue creating that it wants to. So this is up to us. So evil, does it exist? Fine. But it's a human-made thing in our experience. It's not just sitting there in the darkness waiting to get you from the word go when you're born. I don't believe that. So with that in mind, no such thing as evil, just ignorance. And the only real evil that I can see is if someone truly knows of a different way and willfully doesn't choose it. And again, maybe that thought applies to, again, what we're talking about here today with the whole, okay, an alien spacecraft that we can retro-engineer has just landed on, some strip of land, and we're going to retrieve it. What are we going to do with it? Well, everybody in the room has the ability to know, whoever makes that decision has the ability to know what the right thing to do with it is. The thing that would be to spread it out part and parcel throughout the world and make the world a better place and say, look at this shit we found in the desert. These poor little guys. I mean, of course, Dr. Greer thinks we crashed it. So there's that. But let's pretend that it's, they ran into trouble. They ran out of gas and crashed into the planet. And we have this, or they've come to us and said, we want to share this. I think the heart of every person knows what the right thing to do there is. So there's no evil in all of that happening. Any evil that may happen as a result is a result of knowing that there was a different way that was good and not taking it.
I think we found ourselves at a Gwar concert.
Gwar? I like Gwar, actually. I have a couple of their first albums.
What are we listening to, Jack?
Oh, this is one of my favorite bands. Tino Troy and his brother, Praying Mantis. They're part of the new wave of British heavy metal movement that brought us Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and all those guys. They're a little more melodic. They stuck around for a few years, but poets in their own right. And this is the title track from their album, A Cry for the New World.
Well, as we cry out for another episode, it was good to hang out with you again.
As always, we'll look forward to next time here at Existence Brewing, our favorite cafe.
We should be breaking chains, not breaking hearts.
Well, it looks like Jack and Michael have finished up their latest chat about all things existence. But if anything they said got your own existence brewing, be sure and catch their other talks at existencebrewing.com and drop them an email to share your thoughts using contact@existencebrewing.com.
Existence Brewing.